Well, I got a bit of sad news this morning because after 6 years, a high-profile marriage of entertainment and media is coming to an end. 91-year-old media mogul Rupert Murdoch calling it quits with former model Jerry Hall.
For decades, Jerry Hall seemed to live inside a fairy tale. She conquered the fashion world, became the partner of one of rock's biggest legends, and later married one of the world's richest men. But behind every glamorous chapter was an ending few people saw coming. To millions, Hall was the statuesque blonde with effortless confidence, photographed beside music icons, artists, royalty, and billionaires. Her life appeared to unfold like a Hollywood screenplay, yet beneath the magazine covers, something was amiss. And now, at 70, Jerry Hall has finally revealed what Rupert Murdoch did that destroyed their marriage. This is one hell of a roller coaster ride. Stick with us till the end, and you will be shocked. A life the world thought it knew. Long before she became an international celebrity, Hall was growing up in the small Texas town of Gonzales. Standing well over 6 feet tall by her teenage years, she hardly blended into the crowd. Her breakthrough came almost by accident after she moved to France in the early 1970s, where a modeling scout discovered her while she was relaxing on a beach along the French Riviera. Fashion houses quickly recognized what photographers loved about her: striking height, flowing blonde hair, and an unmistakable confidence in front of the camera. By the middle of the decade, Hall had become one of the world's highest-paid models, appearing on dozens of magazine covers and working with designers whose names defined international fashion. She also moved comfortably through artistic circles, counting figures such as Andy Warhol and Salvador Dali among the colorful personalities she encountered as her career soared. But it was music, not fashion, that would change the course of her life. In 1977, Hall met Mick Jagger, the charismatic frontman of the Rolling Stones, during one of rock music's most extravagant eras. At the time, Jagger was already one of the most recognizable performers on the planet. Their relationship quickly became one of the defining celebrity romances of the late 20th century. Together, they traveled the world, attended glamorous premieres, and became fixtures in newspapers and magazines. This was the beginning of the good life, or so it seemed at the time. Despite the constant attention, Hall and Jagger built something that seemed remarkably stable by rock and roll standards. Over the course of the next 22 years, they welcomed 4 children: Elizabeth, James, Georgia May, and Gabriel, and divided their time between homes in England, France, and around the world as Jagger toured with the Rolling Stones. Hall often spoke about putting family first. To the public, they appeared inseparable. They attended premieres, charity events, and family occasions together. Although tabloid rumors frequently surrounded Jagger throughout the years, Hall remained committed to preserving their family. In November of 1990, that commitment appeared to become official. The couple traveled to the Indonesian island of Bali, where they exchanged vows during an elaborate Hindu wedding ceremony attended by friends and family. Photographs from the celebration appeared in newspapers and magazines across the world, and for almost a decade, few people questioned that Jerry Hall had become Mrs. Mick Jagger. This moment appeared to be the beginning of a new chapter. But by the late 1990s, cracks had begun to appear beneath the glamorous image. In 1998, reports surfaced that Jagger had been involved with Brazilian model Luciana Gimenez while still in his relationship with Hall. The situation escalated dramatically when Gimenez announced she was pregnant. Months of worldwide speculation followed until a DNA test confirmed that Jagger was, indeed, the father of her son, Lucas. The revelation shattered beyond repair the trust Hall had spent more than 2 decades building. Although neither public scandal nor tabloid speculation had managed to separate them before, this proved to be the turning point. By 1999, the relationship had effectively come to an end. Yet even then, one final surprise remained. As Hall sought to formally dissolve what almost everyone believed had been a marriage, England's High Court delivered an extraordinary ruling. The judges concluded that the Hindu ceremony held in Bali had never created a legally valid marriage under English law. Despite the painful ending, Hall and Jagger eventually found a way to preserve something equally important. They remained on good terms as co-parents, appearing together for family celebrations and later embracing their roles as grandparents. Hall has since explained that when children are involved, staying friendly matters. As Hall entered her late 50s, she remained admired in the fashion world, continued acting, and embraced her growing family. But romantically, she kept a much lower profile. Few could have predicted that the next man to capture her heart would come not from music or entertainment, but from the world of global media and politics. That man was Rupert Murdoch, the billionaire who promised stability. For Jerry Hall, Rupert Murdoch seemed to represent everything her previous relationship had not. Mick Jagger had lived at the center of rock and roll excess, where constant touring, relentless media attention, and tabloid scandals came with the territory. Murdoch wasn't a rock star. He was something arguably even more powerful, a man who shaped what millions of people read, watched, and believed every single day. By the time he met Hall, Murdoch had spent decades building one of the largest media empires in history, with newspapers such as The Times, The Sunday Times, The Sun, and The Wall Street Journal, alongside television giants including Fox News. Presidents, prime ministers, and business leaders regularly sought his favor. To Hall, however, friends later suggested he seemed less like a media titan and more like a dependable companion. Murdoch's personal life, however, was almost as eventful as his professional career. Before meeting Hall, he had already been married 3 times. His first marriage, to Australian flight attendant Patricia Booker, produced 1 daughter before ending in divorce. His second marriage, to journalist Anna Torv, lasted more than 3 decades and produced 3 children before ending in 1999. Only weeks later, Murdoch surprised many by marrying Chinese-born entrepreneur Wendy Deng, who was 38 years younger than him. Together, they had 2 daughters before divorcing in 2013. By the time Hall entered his life, Murdoch was in his mid-80s, had built a family spanning multiple generations, and remained one of the most influential businessmen on earth. Yet those close to him often described a man who disliked being alone and genuinely enjoyed family life despite his demanding career. Their introduction came through Murdoch's sister, Janet Calvert-Jones, and his niece, Penny Fowler, during a visit to Australia in the summer of 2015. Few expected sparks to fly so quickly. Hall was 59 years old, Murdoch was 84, and they came from entirely different worlds. Yet within months, they were photographed together at the Rugby World Cup in London, looking remarkably comfortable in one another's company. By January 11, 2016, readers opening The Times encountered an unusual announcement tucked inside the newspaper's births, marriages, and deaths column. It simply read that Rupert Murdoch and Jerry Hall were delighted to announce their engagement. Then, on March 4th, 2016, Murdoch and Hall married during a private civil ceremony at Spencer House in London. The following day, they celebrated with family and friends at St. Bride's Church on Fleet Street, often known as the spiritual home of British journalism. Between them, the couple brought together 10 children from previous relationships. Standing outside the historic church, surrounded by smiling relatives, Murdoch appeared almost transformed. He later declared himself the luckiest and happiest man in the world, and jokingly announced on social media that this would probably be his last post because he was ever more in love. Friends and acquaintances soon noticed subtle changes in Murdoch's public demeanor. Hall, with her unmistakable Texas warmth and easy humor, appeared to soften the often intimidating media executive. She accompanied him to premieres, charity events, and state occasions without seeking attention for herself. Unlike some previous spouses of powerful businessmen, Hall rarely involved herself in corporate matters or public political debates. Those close to the family later described her as attentive and protective, particularly regarding Murdoch's health. That devotion became especially significant in January 2018, when Murdoch suffered a serious back injury after falling aboard the yacht Morning Glory while cruising in the Caribbean. The accident required hospitalization and months of recovery. Hall remained constantly by his side, helping coordinate his care while shielding him from unnecessary public attention during a frightening period. To the outside world, the marriage appeared remarkably peaceful. Hall divided her time with Murdoch between homes in London, New York, California, Oxfordshire, and family properties scattered across several continents. They attended Wimbledon, royal events, and family gatherings, often accompanied by children and grandchildren from both sides. Yet Murdoch's wider world remained anything but tranquil. The shadow of the news of the world phone hacking scandal, which had erupted years earlier and forced the closure of one of Britain's best-selling newspapers, continued to hang over his legacy. Meanwhile, Fox News remained a lightning rod for political controversy in the United States, and analysts increasingly questioned how Murdoch's vast empire would eventually be divided among his heirs. Behind the scenes, succession planning was becoming a serious challenge. Remarkably, Hall seemed largely insulated from those corporate battles. While Murdoch navigated boardrooms, lawsuits, and family succession questions, she maintained a comparatively private life focused on fashion, art, and family. Friends later recalled that she appeared genuinely happy, at least for that time. Cracks beneath the perfect picture. Even as the couple moved on with their lives together, the pressure surrounding Rupert Murdoch's empire was becoming impossible to ignore. By the late 2010s, his companies remained enormously influential, despite years of controversy. The phone hacking scandal involving News of the World had closed one of Britain's oldest newspapers in 2011, but its shadow had never fully disappeared. Murdoch had appeared before a British parliamentary committee, where lawmakers questioned him about the scandal, while criminal investigations led to convictions of several former executives. Although Murdoch denied knowledge of the illegal hacking and was never criminally charged, the episode permanently altered public perceptions of his empire. Murdoch also had 6 children from 3 previous marriages, several of whom already occupied senior positions within the family business. His eldest son, Lachlan Murdoch, had gradually returned to leadership after previously stepping away, while James Murdoch had become increasingly outspoken, at times appearing to distance himself from editorial directions taken by parts of the family empire. Elizabeth Murdoch had built her own successful media career, and Prudence Murdoch remained close to family affairs despite staying largely outside the corporate spotlight. Observers increasingly wondered who would ultimately inherit real control over a company that influenced politics and public opinion across multiple continents. The comparisons to a Shakespearean family drama were impossible to ignore. Years before television audiences embraced the fictional Roy family in HBO's Succession, Hall rarely entered those conversations. She deliberately avoided becoming involved in Murdoch's corporate world, and instead appeared content focusing on family, fashion, and charitable events. She almost never commented publicly about Murdoch's businesses or political controversies, and interviews during their marriage revealed little about their private life together. That silence became one of the defining characteristics of the relationship. Hall had spent decades living under relentless tabloid attention during her years with Mick Jagger. With Murdoch, she seemed determined to protect what privacy remained. Then came the coronavirus pandemic. Because of Murdoch's advanced age, those close to the family understood that he faced significantly greater health risks than younger people. According to later reporting from journalists familiar with the family, Hall became especially cautious during this period. She limited visitors, emphasized social distancing, and took public health guidance seriously. Those precautions are also said to have created friction with certain members of the extended Murdoch family. Murdoch himself continued working despite approaching his 90s. His schedule remained packed with board meetings, acquisitions, political conversations, and strategic planning. Unlike many business leaders who retired long before reaching such an age, Murdoch showed little interest in stepping away entirely. Even after selling major entertainment assets to Disney in 2019, he remained deeply involved in News Corp and Fox Corporation. That relentless pace inevitably raised questions. How much longer could one man continue directing such an enormous global enterprise? More importantly, what would happen when he no longer could. For Hall, the contrast could hardly have been greater. While Murdoch's life revolved around billion-dollar decisions capable of reshaping the media landscape, hers had become noticeably quieter. Friends described the marriage as affectionate and supportive. There were no persistent tabloid rumors of infidelity, no public arguments, no obvious signs that the relationship itself was under strain. If anything, observers assumed the couple had settled into the comfortable companionship. But then, it all fell apart. 33 words. On an ordinary day in June 2022, 6 years of marriage reportedly ended in an email. According to reporting later published by Vanity Fair, Jerry Hall was at home, unwell with food poisoning, when she opened a message from her husband. For a couple who had appeared united through family gatherings, public appearances, and even serious health scares, what followed stunned almost everyone who learned about it. The email read, "Jerry, sadly, I've decided to call an end to our marriage. We have certainly had some good times, but I have much to do. My New York lawyer will be contacting yours immediately." Those few sentences, barely more than 30 words in substance, contained no detailed explanation, no invitation to talk, and no indication that the decision was open for discussion. News of the separation spread with remarkable speed. Rupert Murdoch was not simply another billionaire. He owned media organizations that had reported on countless celebrity divorces over the decades. Now his own private life had become the story. Newspapers across Britain, Australia, and the United States carried headlines about the unexpected split, while television commentators noted how little warning there had been. Friends quoted anonymously in several publications said Hall had been blindsided by the decision. Publicly, however, she remained almost completely silent. There were no emotional interviews, no lengthy statements, and no attempt to argue her side of the story before television cameras. Within weeks, the legal process moved quickly. On July 1st, 2022, Hall filed for divorce in Los Angeles, citing irreconcilable differences. By August 11, 2022, the divorce had been finalized. Attorneys for both sides released a brief joint statement saying the parties remained good friends and wished each other well. On paper, the separation appeared unusually cordial, yet later reporting suggested the private reality may have been far more complicated. According to Vanity Fair, Hall later told friends that when she returned to collect belongings from the couple's California estate, security personnel monitored the process while her children helped her pack. Reports also claimed she was asked to provide receipts or other documentation to prove ownership of certain items before removing them. Another unusual provision in the settlement also drew attention. Multiple reputable outlets reported that Hall agreed not to provide story ideas to the writers or producers of HBO's Succession. Although creator Jesse Armstrong has repeatedly said the series drew inspiration from several wealthy families rather than solely the Murdochs, comparisons between the fictional Roy family and Rupert Murdoch's empire had become impossible to ignore. While Hall withdrew almost entirely from public discussion of the divorce, Murdoch's personal life moved forward quickly. Less than a year after the split, on March 20th, 2023, he announced his engagement to Anne Leslie Smith, a former San Francisco police chaplain. The engagement lasted only about 2 weeks before it was called off. Just over a year later, on June 1st, 2024, Murdoch married retired molecular biologist Elena Zhukova during a private ceremony at his Moraga vineyard. The wedding marked his 5th marriage. Hall chose a very different path. Rather than pursuing another high-profile relationship or publicly revisiting the end of her marriage, she quietly returned to the life she had built long before Rupert Murdoch entered it. She continued attending major fashion events, including Paris Fashion Week, often alongside daughters Elizabeth Jagger and Georgia May Jagger. She devoted more time to her expanding family, embracing life as a grandmother and speaking far more about her children and grandchildren than about past relationships. Despite continued public interest, Hall consistently declined to turn her divorce into a public spectacle. When she finally spoke in a major interview years later, the headline word, was traumatic. One word that changed the story. In a wide-ranging interview with British Vogue published just weeks before her 70th birthday, Hall finally addressed the marriage. The headline-making moment was a single, carefully chosen description. Asked about the end of her marriage, Hall called it traumatic. She confirmed that the divorce had been deeply painful, but refused to elaborate on the private details. Rather than opening old wounds, she appeared determined to acknowledge the experience without reliving it publicly. Perhaps the most revealing fact she shared was surprisingly simple. Hall disclosed that she had not seen Rupert Murdoch once since their divorce became final in August 2022. Not at a family gathering, not at a social event, not by chance. Unlike Mick Jagger, Murdoch shared no children with Hall. There were no birthdays, graduations, weddings, or grandchildren, creating opportunities or obligations for continued interaction. When the marriage ended, the connection appears to have ended with it. Hall expressed that contrast in a characteristically understated way, reflecting on why she remained friendly with Mick Jagger. Despite the painful end of their relationship decades earlier, she explained, "Not all exes you want to be friends with, do you? Some people aren't friendly, but I think when you have children with someone, it's important to be friendly." Mick Jagger's affair with Brazilian model Luciana Gimenez became one of the biggest celebrity scandals of the late 1990s, and a DNA test confirming he had fathered another child effectively ended their 22-year relationship. By almost any measure, that breakup was more publicly dramatic than her divorce from Murdoch. Yet Hall eventually rebuilt a cordial relationship with Jagger for the sake of their children. The Murdoch marriage, by contrast, ended without public allegations of infidelity or prolonged legal warfare, but also without any apparent reconciliation afterward. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.